Well, hey there, everybody. Yes, it is a brand spanking new episode of Andrew and Jerry Save the World, episode 99. Andrew and Jerry can't believe they're not standing. It's a State of the Union special. I'm Andrew Langer.
Jerry Rogers.
And yeah, we both seem to be in moods, my friend. I am dealing with Brandolini's Law today. Now, Jerry had texted me last night. We're going to get into the State of the Union. Brandolini's law, Jerry, is an axiom that says that it takes, in order to refute bullshit, it takes an order of magnitude greater than the energy used to create it. So anytime sort of you get trolled or someone pushes back and starts raising it, just it's a real pain in the butt. I woke up this morning
Again,
and
I'll simplify that from
yeah,
what was it? As
thanks.
good as it gets. Jack Nicholson.
Yes.
No, it wasn't as good as it gets. It's the other one when he's with the actress Helen Hunt.
Yeah,
What was
that's as
that
good
one?
as it gets.
Oh, it is okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, um,
I take away all reason.
yes, and but anyway,
I
but
think
you
of a
know
man and
a
I take
woman
away all
knocks on
reason
his
and
door,
accountability.
and he looks at her and says, "Go sell crazy somewhere else."
Yeah,
Here's the thing.
we're all sold out today.
But the thing is that
We're all stocked up today.
you cannot engage crazy
Right.
with reason, and that's the
No, 100%. It's just, I woke up this morning and you know what? We wake up early and it's before 6 a.m. And I had tweeted out last night because I was pretty steamed about Abigail Spanberger's speech, Governor Spanberger of Virginia. Um, and I know we're going to cover this. I was so thoroughly right. She could have gone and done a speech that was a response, but because she's in Colonial Williamsburg, which they did not call Colonial Williamsburg, which I find fascinating. She referred to it as historic Williamsburg.
Well,
To
because Democrats can't say the word colonial.
100%, right. Someone invited Abby Spanberger, Governor Spanberger, to do the response and then realized, oh my God, she's the governor of Virginia. She can't do it from the Capitol in Richmond because that was the Confederate capital. And so she goes to Williamsburg. And she was enthusiastically endorsed in giving this speech in Williamsburg by the president of the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation, which I got a real problem with because Colonial Williamsburg, not only is it a 501c3 organization, so a research and education organization, it's a research and education organization that has consistently been losing money. And so by doing this, they have massively alienated an audience. So I just tweeted out last night, in addition to saying that basically Abby Spanberger, you know, accused the Republicans and Trump of everything that she and the Democrats are guilty of, which is par for the course, but that Colonial Williamsburg is a 501c3. They cannot engage in partisan political campaign activity. And what Abby Spanberger did was give a campaign speech. So I asked the question whether or not they were paid for it. They paid for it. So I woke up this morning to some snarky kid, and I'm going to say this, it's going to be ageist of me. Come to find out, William and Mary, class of 2021, never had him as a student, history major, who was upset that I had referred to the building they were in as the House of Burgesses, which is so stupid, but then also tried to school me on the finer points of what a 501c3 can and cannot do, and was just plain wrong. And so I woke up and I'm like, this set me into a mood. I think Jerry came on. He was in a mood. I don't know what his deal was. Jerry came on a mood. I'm in a mood. Um, and part of it is because I, of course, got to bed last night. Never go to bed angry. I went to bed angry after the speech last night. But let's start here, Gerald. Which it with Oh, and then I'm sorry, and the guy, I responded to the guy, corrected him, admitted that the phrase that I used was the wrong phrase. Um, and then he made a dig at my place of policy employment. And I'm like, you know something? You're 27 years old, maybe. You haven't done anything of accomplishment yet. I wasn't going to bring and wouldn't bring your employer into it, but all of a sudden you're going to snipe at me because of where I do my policy work. I could drop the F bomb, but I won't. Jerry, you were very excited about the speech. I know you don't do impressions, but give me your impressions.
And unfortunately,
Yeah.
look, the bottom line for me with the president's speech is it was the greatest State of the Union address since George W. Bush 9/11.
Yeah.
And it's because he said things, he emphasized things that Republican presidents are afraid to say. In fact, members of Congress, the GOP broadly, is afraid to defend the borders, defend that we're deporting illegals, defend the fact that, yes, public safety matters and we cannot be putting repeat offenders back on the streets. He called out the Democrats specifically.
Yeah.
Again, it was very partisan, but the best line of the speech was when they refused to stand,
Right.
when he, again, and the president gambled here because he said, leading into this, he said, I want every member here, I want members of Congress to stand with me if you believe, and I'll paraphrase,
Yeah.
if you believe that our duty is to American citizens, not to illegal aliens.
Right.
And he gave the Democrats a chance. Now it was a poker move
Yeah.
because they could have stood. He gave them the chance, and then they refused to stand. And that should be, if the GOP is smart, that should be the beginning of the midterm elections. Push back against
Right.
the ICE misinformation, push back against the misinformation about criminal aliens, push back in terms of American sovereignty and our borders. And again, could you imagine any other Republican, forget presidents, any other Republican taking that risk? That was a risk the president took.
I think it is more likely for a Republican to take that risk now than it would have been, even 8 years ago, right? I mean, I think there's the pre-Trump world, right? Because at the end of the day, Jerry,
I'll push back there because I don't understand why we don't employ Mike Lee, Senator Mike Lee's speaking filibuster. The SAVE Act is an 80-20 issue. The Democrats are so broken that they can't support voter ID when 80% of Americans support it. But the Republicans are playing right into the hands of the Democrats on not pushing this issue.
No. Let me. So I think we're talking about two different things here, because part of it is I think you will see more Republicans, and I think J.D. Vance, I think Ted Cruz, I think Marco Rubio, who go out and prosecute those cases. I think you're right that there are a lot of Republicans who could not find their testicular fortitude, if it was pointed out to them on a chart. But what I'm saying is that I think that's what we saw last night. There are fundamental norms that have been broken. And I tweeted out at one point during the speech last night, remember when it was, what a quaint notion that we have that we would all be so outraged when Joe Wilson, who I have a letter from Joe Wilson.
You lie.
You're right. When Joe Wilson yelled, you lie at President Obama, the world was aghast at this. When Obama called out the Supreme Court justices, the world was aghast at that.
Actually, on that note, I was hoping that this president would not do that.
Yes, me too.
He did say they were wrong, right, but he did not call them out in the way that Obama did.
100%. But my point at the end of the day is, last night's speech was just punctuated by heckling and yelling. It started off with the one member getting hauled off the floor because he held up some sign referencing that video from a couple of weeks ago.
Black people aren't apes, is
Black
what
people aren't apes.
And the irony there is, when I saw it, I thought to myself, really, we need to be reminded of this? It's almost as if they play into the tropes, into the nonsense.
But right, because at the end of the day, so much of it is theater. Now, at the very least, right, we recognize that as far as theatrics go, it was a pretty good show last night. It's so funny. My wife and
I said this, I tweeted this out, I think, or I said it to someone last night. This was political theater,
right?
And President Trump delivered.
Oh yeah.
This was all the first 2/3 of this speech was wonderfully crafted, and his pause points. And again, these people are crazy. Stan bringing in the hockey team. Another thing too is,
and the two Medal of Honor winners. I mean,
right. But here's the thing. Again, if I'm a midterm consultant, Democrats are against the USA hockey team. It's
Right.
insane. It's
Well,
insane what this president has forced these Democrats' positions for them to take.
well, right. That's the thing. So somebody I know put up on Facebook this morning, that everything that the president touches turns to poop. I was a little bit more strong about that.
Yeah.
And I think there's a flip side to this, which is we are at such a level of mass delusion in America that every time, anytime the president weighs in on something, right? The president could weigh in and say that, puppies and chocolate are wonderful, and whatever the percentage is, 53% of America would go all kinds of crazy and say we can't have puppies and chocolate anymore because
The funny
Donald
thing
Trump
about
likes
that
them.
is that I don't think it's 50% of America. I
I know,
think
I'm just making a
right.
point, right? It's a
It's
percentage.
99% of the Democrats, and unfortunately, other Americans are spoon fed their news from a legacy media that is now, 4 years ago under the Biden years, it was all about censorship. Now it's all about misinformation. And I have to say this: Chuck Schumer, leading into the State of the Union, had put out a video saying, "Here's the real State of the Union," and it showed all of these instances with ICE and these chaotic moments. But he purposefully he the Democrats don't care about the truth. Like there was a scene of a
Right.
woman being pulled from a car. This is Trump's America. But the honesty there is missing because that woman was someone who drove from I think I don't know,
Wherever it was.
Colorado
Yeah.
or California, wherever it was, drove to Minnesota. She was an activist, and when she was pulled over by police because she was interfering and agitating, she said she was handicapped and she was on her way to the doctor. She
Yeah.
wasn't.
Right.
She was a liar. She was,
But
but that's the video they use.
Jerry,
My point
this
is
is
that
this is this is Brandolini's law in action, right? The
right?
the order of magnitude
Yes.
of greater energy it needs to sort of explain and push back on the half truths. Go ahead.
But again, I really miss the idea. I miss the Peter Jennings
Right.
era of media because even though they were biased, they weren't propagandist. And
Right.
the media today, because all those videos that Chuck Schumer used were segments from media.
Yeah.
And I'll say this, and I exaggerate to make a point. I'm not doing that here.
Yeah.
Every instance when the media has said a U.S. citizen was disappeared, a legal immigrant was targeted, a 5-year-old was arrested, in every single instance, it's been untrue.
Yeah.
Not some of the
Right.
time, not half the time, every time. However, these images are chaotic and violent, and they're snipped and clipped, and they're used as propaganda. This is like Arnold Schwarzenegger's Running Man. Remember
Right.
the scene where he's rescuing people, and the government clips it to make it
Right.
look like he's murdering them.
Sure.
This is exactly that.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And
But
you know,
and
it's
again,
to me.
and I'll sum
Yeah.
it up by this: the State of the Union. This president pushed back on all of that.
Right.
And again, I'm not sure, given the ICE debate, the perception right now, at least in the mainstream kind of legacy media, he pushed back against this,
Right.
and a lot of Republicans wouldn't have that strength or commitment to principle to push back.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting because I would have obviously I'm a different person would have done this speech a lot different. Let me start here. Actually, I could be snarky and say, nothing pushes back against the meme about or the concept that we have a regular people party and a deep state party, or nothing pushes back on the idea that there is no deep state than having a former deep stater do your State of the Union response. Again, I think there are so many things wrong
The
with
problem with Spanberger,
yeah,
and I haven't seen much response to the response today, even though from 5:30 a.m. to 7 a.m.
yeah,
I went through every single newspaper and journal and Substack. But the fact of the matter is, if I'm the Republicans, I immediately paint Abigail Spanberger as the imposter that she is.
right,
I mean, again, the Democrats took a risk in choosing her because of her first couple of days in office. She went total woke, total
yeah,
radical. but I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that brought to light. If I am all the conservative outlets and Substacks, not only am I giving a review of the State of the Union today, but I'm also saying on her first day, Spansberger did A, B, and C, all of which she ran against. She
Right.
pretended to be a moderate, and it turns out she's the second coming of Mamdani.
Yeah, it's and I did love the throw off to Mondami in the president's speech last night. I thought
Well,
that
and
was
that's another thing we haven't
yeah.
mentioned yet on this program, and that
Yeah.
is the president was light, loose, and funny.
Well, that was where I was going to go with this, which is
Yeah.
because we can talk about Spanberger in a minute, but there is no way, even from day one of the Joe Biden presidency, that Joe Biden could give a speech that was, what did it clock in at, an hour and 45 minutes? Almost
Oh,
two
yeah,
hours.
I don't know. It was almost 2 hours.
It was,
Longest State of the Union in history.
yes. So, there's no possible way that Joe Biden could do that. And it certainly pushed back on the idea that the president is off his game, right? Which is what we,
Absolutely. Well, that's another thing too. Is the president? Look, I thought he got a little punch drunk toward the end. I
who
think they should
wouldn't?
have right. I thought they should have
Yeah.
wrapped it up.
Yeah.
But again, maybe we should start including clips and audio, video in
Sure.
our
Yeah.
in our program. But I mean, just think about to our viewers, your mind's eye. Go back to Joe Biden's last State of the Union. Right, he was being accused, rightly, of being slow and
Yeah.
dementia settling in, and he was in over his head. And for an hour, he shouted. It
Yes.
was one of the most awkward, cringy State of the Unions in history because he shouted.
Old
And
man shouts at cloud. Yes.
old man shouting like from the Muppets, those two guys from the balcony.
Statler and Waldorf. Yeah.
Right. But this was much different. This president, Andrew, he hit every important theme.
Right.
Every theme he hit. And I'm telling, if there are GOP folks who listen to this program, you have your midterm assignment, right?
Well,
Thank you
that's
for
the
your
other part of this,
attention to
which
this
is this
matter.
idea. Which is that the midterms really did kick off yesterday, and I
Yes.
know that it is a long road, right? And again, it gets down to the fact that Abigail Spanberger's speech was a political campaign speech that sets up where the Democrats are going to go, right? She laid it out there. Mickey Sherrill, so
Mikey Sherrill,
Mikey Sherrill and I,
governor of New Jersey.
Abby Spanberger saying, we ran on an anti-Trump ticket. The Democrats in our states ran on an anti-Trump ticket. That's all we were, was the anti-Trump ticket, and that's how we won. That's how we win in the midterms. So what the Republicans
Add to that, which is
Yeah.
where the fourth estate needs to do their work. Spanberger and Mikey Sherrill from New Jersey, they also ran as common sense moderates.
Right. Well, the media
And from
painted
day
them that
one
way.
in their early administrations, they are not governing as moderates.
Right. Well, I mean, listen, and listen, we can get into this because it's one of those things where Spanberger starts off her speech with the three questions. Essentially some one-off on are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Is the president
Irony
working
there,
for you?
the funny thing about that, Andrew,
Yeah.
is the American people are better off today than they were a year ago.
Right, 100%. But also, do you think the president is working to do X, Y, and Z? Yeah. Do I think that you are doing the opposite, Abigail Spanberger? Yeah. I don't know if you follow this here. I know this is very, very parochial. It maybe doesn't apply to everybody. Maybe this is truly a first world problem. But, when Abigail Spanberger talks about, and the Democrats of Virginia talk about taxing dog walking services, that affects me. That costs me money. I use a dog walker when I'm off doing work.
But again, this is my frustration with the Republicans because momentum matters. I'm an old football coach. When you have,
Hey,
when you
hold
have
on,
the,
hold on. Was that bobblehead real? Did someone really make that, or was that an AI thing that you did?
no, that's a real bobblehead.
Someone got you an AI coach bobblehead. Is that next to you somewhere?
No, it's
Is it
downstairs on the
Yeah,
bar.
there you go. Never mind.
But it's a bobblehead. It's me, and it says "Coach." It's the basketball team gave it to
Yeah.
me. It says, "Yeah, that's real."
No, very nice. I'm
Is that
sorry.
cool?
So as a coach,
So as a coach, long story short, and if you want to see my bobblehead, it's up at I think it's up at Jerry
Very
Rogers
jealous.
Show on
I'm
Twitter
very jealous.
or at X. Anyway, but when the offense is moving, when there's momentum, you don't all of a sudden change the game plan.
Right.
If your passing attack is going well, you don't all of a sudden do a 3 yard run. And the problem here is the president last night got a running start. He
Yeah.
really got momentum going on all these very important issues. And this morning, where's John Thune this morning? I'm
Right.
telling you what I would have done. I would have said this morning that we're not going to go nuclear option on the filibuster, but we are going to insist that we engage the filibuster as intended, and that
Yeah.
is if you want to stop the SAVE Act, which is the
Right.
Voter
You have to
ID
get
Act,
in there
you
and
have to get up and he should have done that
speak.
today.
Right. Yeah.
But no, and today they should be out there saying, we're going to do this when it comes to illegal aliens with criminal, but they're not. There should
Yeah.
be a vote today on the legislation he talked about in terms of that little girl
Yeah.
and the truck
The truck
license.
drivers. Yes.
Like they should have been lined up ready to go today,
Right.
and
That's
they're
the
not.
that's a strategy. Yeah. No, I'm inclined to agree with you on that. Yeah. So it is a long way off. The midterms are a long way off. We know that the tide of history is against Republicans going into the 2026 midterms.
And ironically now, even though let's be honest, Trump started this fight, but the Democrats have taken his issue that is redistricting, and they're beating him over the head with it.
Right.
I mean, at the end of the day, a lot
Well,
of Republican states decided not to redistrict, like Indiana, but states like Virginia and Maryland and California and other
I'm
states are
hearing
moving
Colorado.
forward.
I didn't realize Colorado was on that list, but apparently Colorado's on the
Yeah,
list too. Yeah. So,
yeah.
but my point is, it's like, um, we know what's going to happen between now and then, and the lies that were being told last night by the Democrats are the lies that were being told by Chuck Schumer. It's funny. Right before the Super Bowl, there was, again, you and I talked about the vertical integration of the Democratic Party in terms of their talking points and how they get things out. There was a series of Democrats, Maryland and elsewhere, who were tweeting out statistics about how the Super Bowl parties cost more now than they did, while Joe Biden was president. And you go back, and they were coming out of the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee. And if you go and you peel back the numbers are largely based upon what was happening before, Donald Trump took office, right? I mean, obviously there's been a small amount of inflation, but inflation has been stymied. My problem is, and this gets into a longstanding theme you and I have had, which is, and it gets down to what you were saying about Peter Jennings. The other part of this is that the media isn't doing its job to, separate the wheat from the chaff and pull from this. So they are the analog of the Democratic Party in promoting the misstatements and half truths or full
Well,
truths and
and
half
here's the
statements.
bottom line, right? Inflation is somewhere around 2%,
Right.
which is better than it was when Trump took office. Is certainly better than the 9.5% inflation we had during in the mid Biden years. I think the average during the Biden years, the average was 5% inflation. The average over this year is around 2%. It's moving in the right direction, but here's the problem,
Yeah.
because energy costs and labor costs impact food costs and other economic indicators that we measure inflation. So you have states like Maryland, Delaware, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York have the highest. California have the highest energy costs in the country,
Right.
record. Why? Because they have gone to war with fossil fuel. Well, energy, and what does that do? That causes energy prices have come down, but in spite of all of these blue states and their
Right.
war on energy. And what is that? So inflation could be better, but for California, but for New York. And we don't, and again,
The butt
the
force.
media doesn't examine that. I mean, even think about this. Think about in California.
Right. It's all because of data centers, Jerry. That's why your electricity costs are up.
Yeah, yeah. And but California, right, passed infamously a $20 per hour minimum wage for fast food workers. Well, we want to talk about Super Bowl
Right.
costs. Well, if you're going to order wings for your house, for the Super Bowl, well, those wings cost a lot more money because restaurants are forced to pay fast food workers $20 an hour.
Right.
And so again,
And
so
I'm sorry, but also when the Biden administration kills 100 million chickens, right? That's 200 million chicken wings that don't go out on the marketplace.
right.
That's a huge.
My point is that and all the data, again, I
Right.
exaggerate often to make a point. I'm not doing that now. All the data looks good. Job growth, good. Wage growth, good. Stock market, good. Energy costs, good. Gas prices, good. Inflation, good. Everything is moving in the right direction. But however, we have to be honest. There seems to
There we
be
go.
a vibes recession. In other words, people are doing much better than they were doing even just a year ago.
Right.
But if you ask people, I mean, CNN even said this.
Right.
CNN reported yesterday or 2 days ago, going into the State of the Union, they reported rightly that the economy is strong.
Right.
But if you ask people, they don't feel like it's strong.
And that is because you have the Democrats and their adherents in the media who are doing whatever they can, right? If they keep people anxious about what's going on in the world,
Right.
right? Then they win. That's how they win elections, by keeping people spun up about what's going on.
I
That's,
tell you,
yeah,
another thing too is
yeah.
even with all of the misinformation and the kind of political theater the Democrats have created and propagandized over ICE, over immigration and customs enforcement, the fact is the poll numbers are still
Right.
in spite or despite of what the media has put forward. The American people want criminal aliens deported, but a majority of Americans want all illegals deported.
Right.
And what that tells me is that they gave us their full arsenal and it failed. It did not cause the issue to go their way. So if I'm the administration, or more importantly, if I'm the GOP, what I do everywhere is you get the victims of illegal
Right.
criminals, and again,
And
horrible stories,
oh, time
and
out for a
you
second. And
and
Jerry,
you just you pound and you
and
pound and you pound.
because the Democrats have made it, and the Biden administration, and before it, frankly, the Obama administration, but the Biden administration, they made it a point to push the illegal immigrants everywhere in America, into every corner of America. So
Yeah.
every corner of America has a horror story about what's happened. A horror story, but also not even the horror story, but the impact, right? So, let's set aside for a moment what happens, when you have criminals that are released into these communities and are, you can't get rid of them. But even when you have folks who have migrated here illegally, who aren't criminals, who are trying to settle here, that has an impact, right? When
On
you're
rents,
Logansport,
on
Indiana,
wages, on
but
all
on
these on
services,
school
right?
budgets.
So if, yeah, school budgets especially. So if you have a school in which now all of a sudden you have to hire a bunch of English as a second language teachers, that's money
Or
that can't be
special
used.
education teachers
Yes,
and social
right,
workers. Look, New Jersey, Mikey Sherrill, the governor of New Jersey, said that education costs, property taxes, key to her agenda. But
right,
then she went out and on day one, just like Spanberger did in Virginia, pledged not to cooperate with ICE and with immigration and
right.
customs enforcement. And however, New Jersey has the highest property taxes in the country, and there has been an influx of illegal alien children in public schools. And what has happened is not only do you have to hire, you're right, these bilingual teachers, but also the great increase in administrators and social
Right.
workers, and this has exploded budgets. And the Republicans need to make that connection. And
Where,
here's another thing too is,
yeah, but
you and I are both in radio. And the wisdom, the common wisdom, conventional wisdom is radio is you do a segment on a topic, you go to the next topic segment. I don't do my radio program that way.
Yeah.
I stay on a topic, even show after show, until I
Right.
feel like we've had some kind of conclusion to it. Like what's the from Seinfeld? A conversation should end on its own volition. Remember
Yes.
that?
Yeah.
But however, political consultants aren't like that. They'll hit an issue and then go to another issue and then go to another.
Yeah.
No, the Republicans have to pick, like Gingrich did in 94. You got to pick a handful of issues that are 80-20 issues, and you have
Right.
to drive it home. Voter
Right. Right.
ID,
The only
criminal aliens, etc.
right. The one thing we've just got to watch out for is for our friends to do something, things that are profoundly stupid. That's the danger, right? There's so
Oh
much
yeah,
good that's
profoundly
happening.
stupid, like Massey dropping legislation and to have this Epstein file dump.
No,
Worst
yes,
legislation ever dropped in the
yeah,
history
but
of America.
I'm going to go and talk about, the MFN issue, right? Which is, and other kinds of price controls.
And for our audience,
Yeah.
MFN is most
Most
favored
favored
nation
nation. I think
pricing
most
for
of our
prescription
audience
drugs,
understands this.
which
Yeah.
takes the lowest. Take medicine A. Medicine A is sold in Europe. Where in Europe at the lowest price point, then it must be sold in American
Right.
public health, Medicare, Medicaid, etc., at the same price. It is
Right.
price setting. It'll kill innovation. It'll kill mid-size biotechs. It's a terrible idea. Unfortunately, this president is pushing it. And again, I support the president on most issues. He is absolutely wrong on
Right.
two price setting issues. He's wrong on putting caps on credit card interests,
Right.
and he's wrong on putting price controls
And
on
and
prescription
the end
medicines.
results, right, undercut the affordability. It's a but for of its own, right? Which is this idea of there's so much good that's happening, and but for the relentless negative coverage, the president's approval numbers would be higher. But for Maryland and New York and California and their energy prices, inflation would be lower.
Exactly right.
But for this policy or these policies, right? I mean, I've done comments or done an op-ed on the relationship between the credit card issue and housing affordability, which is something that I'm bound up in, right? There's so much good that's happened. Listen, as you know me, the old adage is when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Obviously, I wish we'd talk more about regulations and red tape last night, but
And
he
there's an
stands
area
alone.
where, a very good friend of ours, Brian Darling, who runs an outfit called Liberty Government Affairs, but he's a former counsel to Rand Paul, former
Yeah.
Heritage Foundation guy. He does a bit with me every Sunday on the Jerry Rogers Show on
Literally was going to
WBAL.
make the joke, Jerry. He's a smart guy. You should have him on your radio show sometime.
But he does the Liberty Update with me every single
Yeah.
week. And he's very anti-tariff.
Yeah.
I support the president's tariffs. I have not liked this idea of so-called free trade ever since we gave China most favored nation status, arguing with our old mentor
Right.
Fred Smith from CEI over this. But the fact of the matter is, he's my argument to Brian is that you can't look at trade and tariffs as a silo. You have to look at it in combination with the
Right.
regulatory reform and the tax reform.
And also by the same token, anyway, there are little individual decisions that get made that sort of fly in the face of all of this. And to me, it's important to be, consistent. I agree with you, right? I made the point to some of my colleagues in the economics world that if you prevent $600 billion in new regulatory costs from being added to the economy, and in fact, really it's in 2025, it was $800 billion. We cut $200 billion regulatory costs. Then the economy can handle a certain shock from, the tariff
Right.
issue. It sort of changes things around.
You're 100% right. And again, for our audience, so the Supreme Court's decision reversing or unconstitutional the legislation, the Emergency Powers Act.
No, keep in mind, they didn't
that
rule it unconstitutional. They basically said,
they didn't rule executive use of tariffs as unconstitutional.
Right.
They said this law was the wrong approach.
and I want to talk about why that's right.
But
But
all
go
right,
ahead.
you're right. Thank you for so.
Yeah.
Look, Congress has ceded authority to the executive branch on tariffs. That's a fact. So
Right.
this president leveraging and using tariffs as a public policy tool is not unconstitutional. This court decision said that this specific law, this Emergency Powers Act, does not apply. I
Right.
disagree with the court. I don't think it's the end of the world. I think I understand their reasoning. Good men and women can disagree here. But here's the thing. How can you say two things? The law specifically says you can regulate importation. That's
Right.
a tariff, number one. Number two, emergency. Well, Andrew, and again, I wish
Right.
someone on the right who favors this decision explains this to me. Maybe you can. We spent years talking about the fentanyl crisis.
Right.
We spent years talking about the crisis of overdose. We spent years talking about the crisis at the border, and this president put tariffs on Mexico, on Mexico and other countries, Canada, other countries, because we had a crisis in overdose. So I'm sorry. So it wasn't a
Yeah.
crisis.
Okay, but
Well, you
there's two
look,
different, two
Google
different,
fentanyl, and
time out, time out. But
you'll see
two different
1,000
crises. I
times
think
10 stories of fentanyl
the
crisis.
context of this law, in the
National security.
context of this law, we're talking about, when they talk about emergency and a crisis, they're talking about trade war and trade policy specifically, not sort of the general definition of what constitutes an emergency, right?
Well,
So it's,
again,
but
prior to this administration, we've been told that we have a trade deficit crisis.
yes. Well, yeah, but whether or not that's, but Jerry, I'm not, time out. I want to be really clear. I'm not
My point
disputing
is that I disagree with the decision because I think regulating importation does mean tariffs, number one. Number two, I do think there were several crises that this administration said, look here, here, and here. And all you got to do is look at the
But
news cycle
here
prior
is
to
my
him.
point at the end of the day is that this decision was predicated on the Loper Bright decision, which overturned the Chevron doctrine.
Yes.
And so for every lefty never Trumper who was bemoaning Loper Bright and bemoaning the
Right.
overturning of Chevron, and I say this
Well, real quick, just explain
recognizing
what's the Chevron. This was
so
giving
so no,
deference
so
to
this is this idea.
deference
This
to
is idea.
agencies to
Let,
make
let me I'll give you
decisions.
30
Right.
seconds on this.
Yeah.
Basically, back in the early 1980s, there was this Supreme Court decision, NRDC versus Chevron. And it was this case in which basically the court said that an agency is given deference. They are given leeway in how they interpret a statute, right? Interpret the words of Congress. So if Congress says you can't pollute a navigable water of the United States, EPA says that a dry patch of desert sand in the high desert of Nevada is a navigable water. By the way, that's a real example. That's not an exaggeration. That interpretation stands, and it allowed the power of the federal executive branch to expand massively. The Loper Bright decision comes back and says, no, 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 no. Listen, words have meaning. The interpretation has to be grounded in some kind of an objective reality. Throughout the Chevron doctrine, this is great. And immediately the Elizabeth Warrens of the world were angry about this. The Bernie Sanders of the world were angry about this. Now, I'm someone who believes that overarching executive branch power is a huge threat to individual liberty. Big applause here. And immediately Elizabeth Warren put out legislation, something called the Stop Corporate Capture Act, which tried to push this power back into the executive branch. She wants the agencies to have it, except for when the agencies are run by Trump and Trump appointees, in which case then she wants
our good friend Kevin O'Rourke.
Yeah.
This is one of our Andrew and I are going to be up in the Bronx with Kevin celebrating St. Patrick's Day. He's a Just Us League guy. He texted me yesterday during the State of the Union, and I thought it was brilliant. He said, to your point, Democrats don't want to govern; they want to rule.
Right.
And so this deference to the agencies, they only want it is if Democrats are in control.
Right. And what it comes down to is, and this is a conversation that I had with somebody a long time ago about the issue of hypocrisy and intellectual and ideological consistency. Because I'm someone who has to be consistent over time. I can't sort of change my views. Absent evidence, right? If you give me evidence to the contrary, I obviously can, right, be persuaded. We want folks who are persuadable. But the problem is, when we sort of go back, and this gets to the issue, Jerry, you were talking about free trade and about size of government and executive branch power and unilateral authority. The Democrats don't have a problem going back and forth, right? The Democrats had no problem, and pardon me, Geraldine, I'm going to say this. Democrats had no problem shitting on America for the last 25 years. But then they
40
realized,
years.
oh my God, we can't win elections in 2026 and 2028 if we're constantly pushing America down. So we're going to go and we're going to then now embrace America. And we're going to say that all of the stuff that our opponents are doing isn't America. We're going to essentially do to them what they rightfully did to us over the course of many, many years because they don't care about being inconsistent, right? The left says you can't use the word colonial. The left says the founding fathers were a bunch of racist slave owners. Well, then you get Abigail Spanberger in colonial, and she called it historic Williamsburg, talking about George Washington and George Washington's speech because they don't care. They can be hypocritical. And so, I was told again, it was quaint and old fashioned, that I was trying to be intellectually consistent. If the other side's going to do it, we need to do what we can to get our stuff done now. And I'm like,
I don't agree with
I'm not
that.
about a debate society.
I said this on because you're right. Chuck Schumer was against illegal criminal aliens, and now he's for
Right.
them. I mean, and we can go by issue by issue by issue. There's a lot that where I'm on the record. I mean, you go back, 7 years of Jerry Rogers show, but even before that, op-eds and other such things, podcasts, etc. And the fact of the matter is, I haven't taken two sides of the same issue
Right.
on anything. Now, it doesn't mean I'm not persuadable. And I'll give you, to be controversial, I am for the first time rethinking my support for the filibuster. I've been a strong supporter of the filibuster, regardless of who's in the
Yeah.
majority, Democrats or Republicans. But the problem is that something is seriously broken. Just real quick. So the SAVE ID Act, it's very simple. And again, it's an 80-20 issue. 80% of Americans support this. But Democrats are lying, saying it's Jim Crow 2.0, which, by the way, they're big concern about erasing history. When you say that voter ID is Jim Crow 2.0 to my 16-year-old daughter, who doesn't understand fully
Right.
because she didn't really live through institutional racism, well, then Jim Crow mustn't have been so bad, Dad, if voter ID is considered Jim Crow. So the Democrats who are accusing the Trump administration of erasing history, are actually erasing history with
100%.
their political talking points. But the fact is that if we can't pass out of the Senate an 80-20 issue, then there's something seriously wrong in our politics. Our politics is broken. And here's the problem. The reason why Democrats know they can lie and misinform on an 80-20 issue like the SAVE ID Act is because they know that their allies in the legacy media will not hold them accountable.
Right.
So if we don't have a fourth estate holding the Senate accountable, well, then the filibuster is no longer useful. Remember, the filibuster
I
is useful
just,
because you need to have some kind of bipartisan support to move an issue
right.
forward, especially if you're going to have big changes. But that's no longer true, is it?
Right. And that's the thing that I come back to, right? For me, it's always about making sure, right? Part of the reason why you stay consistent is that you don't want to give your political opponents, your ideological opponents, the ammunition to use against you down the road, right?
Which
Well, you did
unfortunately
this.
is only true for the right, not for the
100%.
left.
I agree. That's right. But
Which
and
is why
again,
the
maybe it's
filibuster might
quaint and
not
old
be.
fashioned, right?
Yeah.
I get this. This is I'm sitting here, continuing to think about this. This is why I get very concerned when we start talking about things like the SNAP benefits issue, right? Or the ultra processed foods and nutrition guidelines, or whatever it is. No, hold
Look,
on. I'll give you another really good example. The idea of a tariff rebate, which bothers me from a structural level, right? And I get the political ramifications of it. Sure. How about, as early voting is beginning, you mail out everybody a check, I get the political ramifications of it. On the other hand, this is exactly the kind of stuff that Democrats are talking about, right? Wes Moore can go and engage in all kinds of crazy energy policies in Maryland, and it could drive up the cost of electricity, but it doesn't matter because he says, well, we'll just give every poor person in Maryland a check to make up for us jacking up their prices. And
I know.
and yeah, and that just how about you just don't do it in the first place? So
Right.
anyway, I'm
But
sorry.
but here's the thing is on the Phil, I haven't changed my mind yet.
I
I
know.
do think
But
that
we have to examine it, Jerry. Of course
yeah,
we have
a
to
good
examine
middle ground though is Mike Lee. Let's If we're
If it's
going
going to
to
be a
engage the
filibuster, have it be a
filibuster,
filibuster,
have
right?
it be a
Have it be
filibuster.
have
Yeah,
it be Jimmy Stewart on the floor of the Senate, fighting for his life,
right.
fighting for his
And
career.
again, if
Yeah,
if this Congress does not pass the SAVE Act,
Billy Jack.
the Republicans will be a landslide. They will lose. I don't think we're going to see ever again where one party loses 60 seats, like in
Yeah,
in a couple of cycles that we've seen over the last decade or so. But I think Republicans will lose 20-25 seats if they pass the SAVE Act, and if they really push back on the illegal alien crisis, and actually begin to defend themselves. I
right.
think they can. I think they can pull even, which means keep the majority like it is now, 2, 3, 4, 5 votes.
Yeah.
But not if they can't pass the SAVE Act. I'm not even sure if Republicans should rule if they can't pass the SAVE Act.
It's one of those things, Jerry. Maybe we should be starting with people between the ages of 16 and 18 and making sure that they're ideologically on board, because we know that the next step, of course, for Democrats is to lower the voting age from 18 to
Right.
16. I, of course, think it should go in the other direction, and I'm being totally serious. I think we take away the right of 18, 19, and 20-year-olds to vote, make it 21 and up. But
Well,
that's
look in
unless
many
you're in the
in
military.
many
If you
states, you got to be 21 to buy a pack of cigarettes for
right,
crying out loud.
right. And my point is, if you volunteer to serve in the United States military, then you get to vote. But beyond that, no. Move it back up, because the reasons why we lower the voting age are gone. Yeah. So I mean, that's just it. Looking down the road, Jerry, at November, which is a long way off.
So I mean,
Um,
we're sitting here. It's the end of February, February 25th, 2026. In political time, it's around the corner. If I'm a member of Congress, we started when I worked on the Hill. I worked for a member. We started our reelect. We would have started 3-4 months ago.
right.
We would have had our campaign manager hired. We would have in our district campaign office a big calendar with backwards.
Yeah.
I think we are right in it, and I do think that's why I'm so disappointed that here we are the day after the State of the Union, and I don't what the hell are Republicans doing?
No, well, I agree with that, and that's just it. I mean, I think at the end of the day, well, maybe some of it is just they're being as Eeyorish as I am. I think the best we can hope for is keeping the blue wave, the blue tide, to a trickle. All they need is a handful of seats. Some of which they're going to get via the gerrymandering, and some of which they're just going to get by the tide of history. I would hope that this is going to be a repeat of the 2022 midterms. I suspect, but I think I am very down on Republicans. Certainly don't think it's going to be anywhere near a
Another
red
thing
wave.
too is look, the GOP is not going to lose the Senate. It won't happen.
Never
They
say never,
might
Jerry.
lose. They might lose a seat or two they
Yeah,
weren't expecting to lose, but they're not going to lose the Senate this time around.
yeah,
Yeah, very likely they lose the House,
right.
especially if they don't pass the SAVE Act, which means we have March, April, May, June, maybe June, 4 months
Yeah,
to pass legislation
right.
that might make a difference in the midterms. The SAVE Act is one.
I agree
And
with
there are a
that.
couple of other things that he mentioned. Uh, they're up at Real Clear Policy on leading off the page is a kind of really good overview of what the president put forward as an agenda over the next several months. And again, if the Senate can pass some of these items, especially the SAVE Act, I think the midterms are more competitive.
Yeah, I'm
And
inclined to
and
agree.
yeah. So
Yeah,
my point, because look, And then it doesn't matter, right? Because then what happens is you've done all your good work in the first 2 years, and the House is going to be nullified because the Democrats will have a small majority. They won't be able to move anything. There'll be investigations and impeachment, but it won't go anywhere because Republicans will control the Senate. But then Trump can use his Trumpness, not his Trumpiness, but his Trumpness,
Yeah.
to make sure that he gets MAGA out for the
Here, here.
midterms.
Hey, listen, I think we gotta leave it there, my friend. Where are you? Where do you want to direct people to?
Well, I mean, go to Real Clear Health, go to Real Clear Policy. I mean, that's where all the good stuff is. And Sundays 7 to 10 a.m. The Jerry Rogers Show at WBAL.
Yeah. So, if you're not following me on X at Andrew_Langer, please go and do that. You're still doing the weekly lunch hour podcasts. This week, it was Jennifer Huddleston from Cato actually, Cato's doing an event tomorrow on Section 230, the anniversary of that, part of how I was drawn into the trolls. Jerry, what do you want people to do?
Find the truth, plant your feet, and stand firm. God bless you.
Have a great week, everybody. Have fun, and please stay safe.